and generally one of the best of all. I say generally.
I love that. He's got dad jokes too.
But more than in general, even specifically. But he's been involved with all the things in the community. He's fought some really good, honest elections. And we just, as we said before with Roe versus Wade gone, it's going to be an extremely important time now because it's not in the court. Don will talk more about that as far as congressional actions, not only federally and state, but it's really a great pleasure. It really needs no introduction, but it's a privilege for us to have you again, Don.
I appreciate it. Thank you. You know, breakfast, it's all about Kellogg's and bacon, right? You can play these dad jokes. So you go to the Kellogg's factory, and they gave me a Kellogg's Frosted Flakes box with my picture on it. They got, Michael Jordan and all, they got one big, like, because I have a body for chest, though. I'm not a good athlete guy.
I said I was pretty flaky most of the time.
And I want to also point out, I'm meeting Mrs. Hilgers today. Her son's the speaker of the unicameral. I love the speaker. He's a great guy, and he runs a great leadership role as a speaker, I think. I also want to recognize Rex Gruber. For those who don't know him, he's a Korean War veteran with 2 Purple Hearts. He's been a great friend of mine. I thank you, Rex Gruber. So I just like to periodically reaffirm my pro-life position, and I get a chance to do it sometimes at the EPS breakfasts, and I'll get to do so today. But I'll tell you why I'm pro-life. I know a lot of people. I read an article the other day. It's all about the science, to cut out the faith. That's really not me. But the science is there. When you have heartbeats, now they're detecting heartbeats at about the second week. It's incredible, right? But when you have the unborn baby with its own DNA, obviously its own beating heart, sometimes a different blood type. You see babies sucking their thumb early in the pregnancy. There's no doubt that there's humanity in an unborn child. So yes, I get it. The science should motivate us. But I think we combine science with our faith, knowing that God's given us missions that stand for truth. It motivates me to action. I can have science over here, but also I've read a lot of books. I've read about Nietzsche. You read about the philosophy of Mao Zedong. They also knew science as well, but they didn't have a faith, and ends justify the means. If you don't have that faith, you can almost justify anything, in my view. And human logic and human morality is not God's moral compass that he gives us, right? And so I affirm to you today that I believe that we're all created in God's image. I believe that unborn baby is born in God's image. I've actually debated to myself, what does that really mean? I know we're creative. We have moral choices that we can make. I think we have an eternal soul. I think you probably write a whole book. What does that mean, born in God's image? But I do know this. When we say that, that means we have an inestimable value. And we have to value life. And so I get that's sort of one of my key takeaways, knowing that we're born in God's image. And also I love reading. I try to read an Old Testament chapter every day and a New Testament chapter every day. And I read my way through the Bible that way. So right now I'm in Isaiah. And by the way, Isaiah 53 is one of the most profound chapters in the Bible. If it doesn't give you confidence of your faith, nothing will. It's a great book in the Bible. I'm in Isaiah and Mark right now. But I love reading about Jeremiah. When Jeremiah says, God knew me before I was even born, had a plan for him to be a great prophet. And if you read the Bible too, you know that He's known us before we're born. He's past, present, future, all at once, which I don't really get. It's one of those things that our human brains can't get around. And I love when David says that God personally made us, knitted us in our mother's womb. So I want you to know it's my faith that motivates me to be here, though I know the science is there too. And I love history. I've seen people do terrible things, in the name of science because they didn't have the morality piece that goes with it. So I want to thank you for your voice on the pro-life journey that we've taken. Obviously, I was born in '63, and as a 10-year-old and teenager, I've been brought into these pro-life discussions from way back then with my grandparents, going to my church, and so I've been raised in that tradition of knowing what's right and wrong. But it's been part of the discussion of my entire life. You know, being born in '63. I mean, was 72. I was 9 years old, but my memory, that's all I can remember talking about, was what happened after Roe v. Wade. But your prayers, your hard work, got answered after 50 years. And think about it. Sometimes prayers aren't even answered in our lifetime, but your prayers are meaningful. You know, James says prayers of the righteous are powerful and effective. Your prayers meant something. God heard them. And your labor. It took labor to elect a president. And, you know, I agreed with Trump's on policies, almost down the line. Sometimes don't like his Twitter, don't like the way he treated people, but I love his policies. And the fact that he put 3 Supreme Court justices on there was one of the highlights of his presidency that, you know, I cheer, I embrace, and love. I also like the fact that he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. I could give a whole lot of things I loved about, you know, what he did as president. But it took work to get him there. It took work to get senators that would vote with him to put those Supreme Court justices in. And to do that, it takes boots on the ground, I call it. The ground game, to change hearts. Because ultimately, victory is going to be not at the ballot box or not by the law. It's going to be changing people's hearts. And when you change people's hearts, that's how they end up voting a certain way, or they end up making their own personal lifestyle choices that align with what we think, you know, God would have us do. So in the end, it's about changing people's hearts, in my view. And that's what you've all been doing for a long time. So I thank you for it. Now, where are we going to be at? A lot of people are saying, what are you going to do at the federal government level? Well, I have no doubt, whoever's the majority, I think we should take back the majority this November. We're favored to, but you can't rest on the laurels. You can't take it for granted. There's no doubt we will have votes on the floor of the U.S. House. But we got to be honest. I'm not going to lie to you. I got to be honest with you. Honest expectations. Without 60 votes in the Senate, you're not going to get a lot passed out of the Senate, no matter who's the majority, unless you have those 60 votes. And with Joe Biden as president, I about guarantee you there will be the veto. So what I say is I want us to have honest expectations what's going to happen in D.C. following Roe v. Wade being overturned, which means the action is going to be at the state level. And that's why it's so important that we elect state senators and a governor who shares our views. And I think it was a travesty. We lost 2 key seats in Sarpy County that hurt us bad. Hurt us bad on this issue. It's hurt us bad on other issues because it took away that veto or the filibuster proof that has been stumbling us for 2 years now. So I ask you got to be involved at the state level. Your state senators. We have the ability to pick up 4 or 5 seats, which will be a game changer when we discuss pro-life votes that's going to happen in Nebraska. As you saw yesterday, the governor announced that we were 3 votes shy of trying to get us to 12 weeks restriction. Now, I think one of those votes are gettable. I know all of them. Now, I think one of those we get over. But the fact is we'd still be 2 votes shy. That's why this November is so critical at the local level to get that right. And trust me, there are 4 or 5 seats where those Democrats are so vulnerable that we should be able to pick up and change the landscape on pro-life voting in the next unicamp, whatever they call it. So wanted to put that out there. Looking at polling, we know what's right. I believe life starts at conception, at the implantation. But where the American voters are at, you have this curve, right? And right in that big part of the curve, it's 12 to 15 week restriction. So I just want to put that out there. So what the other side's going to try to do, they're going to try to paint me as the, hardcore on the one side. But the fact is, on their side, and I want you to keep this in mind when you're communicating this election, they believe in no restrictions until birth and taxpayer funding. So you've got to be able to flip this back in this debate. They want no restrictions. In fact, they're aligned with China and North Korea on abortion policy. The 12 to 15 week restriction actually puts us in about where most of Europe is at right now, for what it's worth. Most of Europe is more conservative than we are in our abortion policies right now. Even Nebraska at 20 weeks. We're more of an outlier where we're at. So I just want to lay the landscape out there that they're going to try to stick me out being over here. We got to come right back and say, yeah, this is where you guys are at. Americans don't want taxpayer funding. Now, one of the things that we could do, I believe, in Congress is to maintain the Hyde Amendment. That is one thing that we can fight and win right now, even in the minority, because they can't pass anything without the Hyde Amendment because they have to have 60 votes. If they don't have the Hyde Amendment in there, they won't get 60 votes on anything they try to pass. So that is one thing that we can preserve in the House or in the Congress and protecting the taxpayers with that. So I want to throw that out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And we need your help. I do 6, 7, 8 events a day back home. I talk to people at festivals. I have had so many women come up to me and say, Don, why do you want to stop me from taking out a stillborn child? I go, we don't. That is made up. But that is the story that's being passed around. We're going to prohibit surgery with a stillborn child or tubal pregnancies. You're going to not let me do to operate on a tubal pregnancy. It's not true. But here's what I want to really communicate. We got to be in the information space, correcting this and putting this information out there. Otherwise, the other side is trying to terrorize people with sensational stuff that's just not even true. And so I just ask you to be involved and communicate in your circles what that truth is. Nobody wants to endanger the life of the mother. Period. I don't know a person who says they don't want to protect the life of the mother. But that's not what they're communicating out there right now. In fact, the Democrats under Pelosi and my opponent Vargas says I filled out a survey in 2016 saying just that. I actually remarked in there, I want to save the life of both the mother and the child. But in saving the life of the mother, sometimes you can't because of tubal pregnancies and those examples. But I'm committed to trying to save both. But they're trying to use that language saying, I don't want to protect the life of the mother. So I want you, if you hear that, you know the truth and you can correct it out there. So I wanted to put that out there. I ask us to remember to be empathetic. And I think it gets to Jim's mission here. Where's Jim at? There you are. It gets to your mission, what you're doing. When I went to my church, my pastor said, look around the room. About 1 out of every 3 women or 1 out of every 3 men have had an abortion somehow in their life, whether they were the boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever it may be. So we got to have some empathy as we're dealing with this and how we voice it. Many of us, or many of those who've been impacted in that way, are pro-life because they know the cost, right? So these are folks we can bring on with the empathy and love there. And I just ask you not to forget it because sometimes I hear the harshness, and that's not how you draw people into our team. I also want to say that we need to let people know that they're not alone in their pro-life views. So for those who know the Runners for Life, they have a great signs. I have one in my front yard. And in my block, we have 3 of those signs out there. So people go around, they go, oh, there's a pro-life guy. I ask you to think about how you can do that because we want people to know they are not alone. And it's a messaging in a different way. So let me go in a little more political tone here. Our district, and a lot of people don't realize this, our district is 38% Republican, 36% Democrat. And people ask me, Don, why aren't you Ted Cruz? Because that does not win in a 38 versus 36 district. I have to win independent voters, swing voters. I just want you to realize that. We are one of the most purple districts in the entire country. At one time, we were rated the 6th most purple district out of 435. I don't know what we are right now. That was a couple of years old data. But I get it all the time. We want you to be this fire breather. I said, yeah, I can get 38% of the vote. That doesn't get me to 50. And I got to be able to bring in the swing and moderate independents. And so you got to just realize that. And I've probably told my people I had no idea, right? We got to remember I defeated a Democrat coming in, and this district twice now has gone Democrat at the presidential level, going back the last 10 years. So we just have to. We got to be realistic. So we got to work this hard. We can never take this for granted. Now my opponent, I was going to be brutally honest. He tried to pretend he was pro-life in 2016. He's become one of the most radical pro-choice, pro-abortion representatives in the unicameral. And he's embraced it full 100%, now running for Congress. When we voted for the dismemberment abortion, he abstained. And he voted present, not voting on there. But his but he's never voted pro-life on anything. He's either voted against it or abstained or voted present. But he's strongly, and when he's verbalizing it now, is saying, I'm going to be full 100%, no restrictions, taxpayer funding, and that's where he's at. So if you know the American Conservative Union, they rated him 2 years ago the most liberal member of the unicameral out of 49. This past one, he went up a little bit, but he's still in the bottom 10%. But here's the key thing. He has a lifetime rating equal to Megan Hunt. A lifetime rating. He may not talk like Megan Hunt, but he votes like Megan Hunt, and you need to know that. And these are the things we're going to be focused on in this coming election with regards to him. That he votes like Megan Hunt. He's voted for every tax increase. He's been weak on crime. And so you're going to be hearing those kind of messages coming from me. And we got the votes to back it up. But I think with that, I will not go down that path and we'll take questions. But I got to put up some information about what we're running against, so you got it. Any questions for me? Before I do, I want to thank EPS, because their mission is now more important than ever, right? My wife worked at Crisis Pregnancy Center, and she was helping new mothers with clothes and baby strollers, and did that part of the mission. But this mission is more important now when we talk about Roe v. Wade overturned. That we're for the full. We want to help mothers when they're pregnant and also after they're pregnant, and we want to help all those young babies as well. I think it's a very important message that we have. Yes, sir.
What's the current status of the Hyde Amendment?
The current status, it's still law, but every year now the Democrats are trying to take it out, but they can't get votes to pass it out of the Senate because they can't get 60 votes. So if they want to pass the budget bill, they got to put the Hyde back in. And so this last budget agreement, we got the Hyde Amendment put back in, because otherwise we would have no budget. We have a shutdown. So, but we got to admit we're in the minority. So they will pass initially, taking it out, and then we say, well, we won't vote for it out of the Senate. But we get rolled over in the House right now. We're actually 4 seats in the minority out of 435, but it's pretty much straight party voting. I want you to know, there's only one Democrat in the House that's pro-life out of 222. In the Senate, we have 50 Democrats. There's only one pro-life Democrat senator. That is the fact. 2 members of Congress are pro-life on the Democrat side, in the House and the Senate. So that's just a fact. Yes, ma'am.
Is Mexico City policy, is that just an executive decision, or is that a legislative decision?
It should be legislative, but we can't get 60 votes in the Senate either way. So then we have presidents that do an executive orders. If the next president, if they're in a different party, overturn it. The right thing to do is, and unfortunately this is the dysfunction right now of Congress. We're so partisan, and they can't find a lot of consensus areas. Congress doesn't end up passing anything. So right now we're not passing anything on immigration, for example. We're not passing anything. So then the president tries to fill that void with executive orders or the courts. But on the Mexico City policy, there hasn't been 60 votes to pass it our way or the other way. And so then the presidents are doing it through executive order, which I personally think is illegal, because you shouldn't legislate. You shouldn't be able to legislate through the president's pen.
How is that funded? Through what kind of committees? Like foreign relations, or is it?
Foreign relations for overseas, yes, like USAID, things like that. A lot of these things are multiple committees, so because we have Hyde Amendment issues internal to our country, right? And that would be, that's normally through Ways and Means, because that's more of a tax on how you're spending your money policy. Yes, ma'am.
Do you see any chance of we ever getting term limits?
Yeah, the only way is through a convention of states, I believe. Now, I'm on legislation to do term limits. I believe in it. Now, I love history. Abraham Lincoln, when he got elected in the 1840s to Congress, half of the Congress was freshmen. So they're used to having, it was supposed to be the guy that was the farmer, the lawyer, the doctor, the military man, goes to Congress for 4, 5, 6 years and comes back. We now today, if you're running as an incumbent, it's a 97% chance you get reelected. And you have got folks they may have been a congressman for, say, 16 years, before that a state senator, and then a city councilman, and they've been doing this since they're like 22. Right.
never held the job.
Yeah, that's right. But they know how to ask for money. Yes, sir.
Historically, when the country was founded, there wasn't Republican Democrats, or parties, there wasn't Republican Democrats. We often hear, I remember it's been tried in a couple elections earlier when I was alive, where they tried to get independent parties to come in and challenge Republicans and Democrats. And I used to kind of laugh at that. But I've bumped into so many people that are educated that say maybe it's time for more than two parties, because neither party seems to get anything done. And I wonder if you're in Washington, is that just something that we hear among ourselves, or is there any rumblings that it's always going to be Republican, always going to be Democrat?
What? I love history again, and I've read the whole history of our parties, which fascinates me. Obviously, at George Washington, we initially didn't have parties, but then you had this quick faction between Jefferson and Hamilton, and then Adams was part of the Federalists, and then under Jefferson you had Madison and Monroe, right? And you had the faction sort of divided between, was the president supposed to be more power than the legislature? And should Washington have more power vis-a the states? Should we have more city orientation or more rural orientation? So the Federalists and the actually they were called the Republicans, and there was Federalists and the Republicans, and then became Republican Democrats and just became Democrats. So we've only known two parties since Washington. And I just got done reading a book on Theodore Roosevelt. He created the Bull Moose Party. But all it did was divide the Republicans, and it gave Wilson the presidency in 1912, thank you, whoever said it. But my point being is, every time we do a third party, it helps one party and it hurts the other party. And that's the problem. So when Ross Perot ran, who did that hurt? Bush. George Bush, we got Bill Clinton, maybe Hillary Clinton too, I don't know. So I don't know.
You don't see that. The reason I say that is because the animosity in families.
Right.
We have Democrats, Republicans in our families. It's gotten so almost violent sometimes.
It is.
That they don't even talk to each other.
I'm worried about that.
Yeah, and so basically, you see that. So.
Yeah, and I'm gonna. Some of y'all are gonna disagree with me in here, and others will agree with me. But this is an area that when we talk about worst threats in America, it is this hyper vitriolic partisanship, and you see it in Congress where you can't even compromise 5%, because that's seen as defeat. Even if you get 95% of a loaf of bread, that's a defeat. And I think our form of government, and James Madison did most of the writing on that, made it so it had to have consensus. And he called it factions at the time when he wrote it, right? It wasn't parties, he called it factions. He didn't want one faction dominating our party. The factions had to work together. And we don't know how to do that right now. And so I have committed myself, and I got to be candid with it, this district will only elect someone who talks about this in this way, that I will try to find consensus. I won't compromise my values. But I will try to find where there's overlap, and maybe we can do something on that. And that's the middle of this district where they're at. I think we need more of that in Congress, because we can't even get an immigration policy at all. It's 100% or zero. And that's the way it is right now. And I think it's hurting us. Yes, sir.
I've got a question on partisanship.
Yeah.
Yesterday, the FBI, in an unprecedented moment, I'm sure you've
That's
talked about already.
Unprecedented. I'm reading it.
Raided the home of a former president.
Yeah.
And for people like me, it seems like a crossing of the Rubicon, where if that can
I said
happen
that
to
today about Caesar. I did.
Well, yeah.
This is where we're going if we're not careful.
And so it's hard to understand how we can make compromises with people who, I might be wrong, but it appears to me that this is a very partisan thing that's happened. And I don't know, maybe Trump has a server in his vault that he wiped with a cloth, or smashed a few cell phones. But to me, this looks like an executive branch power is being used for partisan ends.
So I've been intentionally just a little slow in responding, because I want to see the warrant. And I think I believe in ready, aim, fire. Right now we're in this ready, fire, aim. Oops, I'm sorry, I have all the facts. So I've been a little slow, but this is what I do know. It is unprecedented. And I also know that our party, rightfully, is suspicious of the FBI leadership. Now I get worried because some of my fellow Republicans distrust the entire FBI. I'm more about the leadership. I think there's good people in the rank and file, just like there's good military folks and things like that. You may not like military, but it's unprecedented. And after we saw that the FBI investigated Trump with the Hillary created story of Russian collusion, she created that story, and they knew it, and still were part of that conspiracy. And then they were hands off on Hillary Clinton's classified emails, and they were hands off on Hunter Biden. And now you see this. If the FBI does not have 100% solid justification, they're in trouble. The Republican Party is going to go after them in the majority if this is not extraordinarily well thought out. They did something that they better have the goods in a big way. Otherwise, when we're in the majority, those guys are going to sit in front of us every week, and we're probably going to cut their funding. Or they're going to, just like we did the IRS, right? So the FBI better have their act together on this. I don't know that they do. They haven't even shared their warrant yet, and they're going to have to share their warrant. Why? So that's where I'm at. Honestly, I'm trying to. I want to see, give them a chance to sell themselves, but I don't. It's been 24 hours. They've done nothing. They haven't explained it. Yes, I get you both.
Maybe this is really altruistic and kind of a dreamer statement, but if the rank and file in the FBI are what you say, and what we all want them to be, damn good people, and they, 20% of them or 30% of them today need to stand up and say, I'm leaving this job.
Yeah.
I'm leaving, because those guys running this place are crooks.
Right.
It makes me suspicious that they're all in on it.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see what they do, because you're right. In the military right now, we have some of that going on.
Good.
Our retention is low. Well, I don't know what's good, because I want to defend our country too.
Well, I hear you.
Yeah. But so it's a mixed bag. But we're 40% below our recruitment goals right now. And why is that? Because we have moms and dads who are conservatives who are saying, I don't know why my kid necessarily get in right now, because all this stuff they're hearing. This has, and we're kicking out 60,000 people because of the shots, which I don't know if you saw. I came out, I guess I voted to not kick them out. But it was a party line vote, by the way, on the vaccination vote. But you're seeing the military right now with people voting with their feet. We'll see. I don't have any data right now on the FBI, but this is again unprecedented. I don't know. We're on chapter 1 of this story, so let's see where chapter 2 and 3 go on this. Yes, ma'am.
You said that you cut the IRS budget, but then wasn't it just a couple of days ago where Biden announced he's going to have
87,000.
87,000
Yes.
more come in?
So this bill was called the Inflation Reduction Act. It doesn't reduce inflation at all. In fact, the CBO says it could have 0.1% impact up or down. In other words, no impact to inflation. But we are going to spend $80 billion to hire 87,000 more IRS agents to audit, with the hope of that bringing in $300 billion in revenue. I'm giving you this is the Democrats' fundraising strategy, and they're going to double the size of the IRS. And right now they audit primarily middle class people. So we're only going to audit rich people. Well, why are you doing mainly middle class people today? Right? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't hold water. So it's the best reason I know right now to vote no against that. By the way, they got about $300 billion to the Green New Deal invested, and they're doing price controls on some drugs, which for some that may sound good, but we should know when you do price controls on drugs, you get less of it. That's how you had food lines in the Soviet Union, right? You do price controls, you're going to have less R&D. And America today leads the world in inventions on medicine. And we have double the options of like Australia for drugs. You do price controls, and we're gonna lose that. But that was their fix, and they're doing it on party line vote. Yes, sir.
It seems like at least once a week we hear in the news of a mass shooting.
Yeah.
Many of those involving the AR-15 assault rifles. Now, I also see where it's probably, and I'd like your opinion, it's probably unlikely that assault rifles are going to be completely banned. What are your thoughts on stemming the tide of these mass shootings?
Well, we've always had a lot of guns. I'll say that up front. But now these mass shootings, it's still a very small part of the murders, but obviously it gets our attention because when you have 20-some-odd people killed or children killed, it's obviously very traumatic for everybody. But there's not necessarily more guns in our culture today, it's the people have changed. And so I got to think, I think there's a cultural issue, a faith issue here. You look at that kid in Texas. His dad disowned him. His mom and him didn't get along. He didn't have a relationship. He had no friends. He was bullied. I probably had no hope for eternity, but no, there probably is an eternity. He was angry. This is what we're dealing with, in my view, a faith, spiritual core issues right now on this. So I will just tell you, there's more people killed by knives and fists than they are semi-automatic rifles. It's about 1% of the murders are here. And so people want to say, get rid of the AR-15. There are 60 other semi-automatic guns. Is it a feel-good measure to do that? Because if you're going to go, you could just buy another one. I have a 30-06 semi-automatic. I mean, so this AR-15 today is the most popular gun in America. It's the most popularly owned gun. And 99% of the people out there are law-abiding people, right? So I think, to get to your question, there's not an easy single answer. But we got a mental health issue, we have a spiritual issue. We got to fund mental health more. I can't mandate spiritual stuff in government, but it's really a cultural church thing. But we can do stuff with mental health. We can do a lot more with school security. I was talking to school board members, and they said, "No, we don't want to do school security." I said, "Well, you're going to have to." I said, even if you ban any gun sales in the future, there's still 300 million guns in America. You're going to have to secure your school. Some of these people don't want to face reality. So you got to come up with security measures. You need police, 1 or 2 policemen in the schools. They call us resource security officers or security resource officers, whatever they're called. So we're going to have to do some things that secure our schools out there. I do think in most cases, like the kid in Chicago, people knew that he was dangerous. They didn't report him. And he could have had his guns taken legally then. The guy in Texas was killing cats on video. That's a felony. He should have had his guns taken away. So a lot of folks want more laws, but there's opportunities to deal with a lot of these folks with the laws we have. The shooter in Chicago, the shooter in Texas, should have had their guns already taken away with the laws on the books. But I know it's probably not the best answer. I'm grappling with it.
Maybe time for one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, back to Roe v. Wade. So that's pushed everything back to the states.
Yes.
Because that's where it belongs. But all hell has been unleashed now because there's a fight in every state.
Yeah.
What about personhood for the unborn? That's really the answer. That's the only answer.
Which will take a constitutional amendment. And I think we should go down that path. Right now, you're not going to get that done. You can't get action in the South. I'm just giving you an honest answer. Right now, the action areas, or at least the immediate and intermediate time ahead of us is going to be at the state level. Because anything you do in the Congress, you've got to get 60 votes. And plus, right now we're dealing with a veto president. So I think you're right ultimately. But in the meantime, you're going to have to deal with the state level. And by the way, Nebraska's going to be more conservative. Right now it's 20 weeks. So that's going to go, and so let's negotiate the best we can to get what we can passed out of Nebraska. Other states will even be more here. And you have states like California who won't do anything. That's just the way we're at right now. Yeah, Kansas. But did you read that Kansas law? I couldn't even understand it. I got 2 master's degrees. I read it, I go, what am I reading? I'm just being honest with you. It was a poorly written thing. So if you want to win this thing, you got to put a little aptitude up here and make it easy to understand. If I can't understand what I'm reading, we got a problem, right? But I did. I read it, and but it's got to. I did talk to one of our legislators. I don't want to mention his name. He says, "Don, I want all or nothing." I said, I don't agree with you. Take what you can negotiate and get. In this case, 33 votes in the unicameral, and then we got to keep putting hearts and minds. This is not, even if we get some success in the next year out of the unicameral, trust me, it ain't going to stop because the other side's going to be pushing the other way, right? And so we got to keep working this even after we get success there. I only know how to be honest and transparent. But you're right, in the long term, you are right. That's going to take change in hearts and minds. So thank you for your time. Let me ask you to consider, if you want a yard sign, let Derek know, we'll deliver them. I ask you to, if you like to do coffees in your backyard or whatever, a happy hour, we want to grow our circle. And I'll let you know, TV costs $80,000 a week. I'm going to go on air the last week of August. I got to run it all the way through. I'd like to get on radio. So any kind of change or dollars you can afford, send our way. That's what I do. I spent a year raising money and saving it. And then I try to save up about 1.5. And the last week of August, I unleash, I was going to say a bad word. I believe in carpet bombing and precision bombing as an Air Force guy. Okay, there we go. But going back to some father's jokes, as my last name Bacon, I don't like watching the sausage making in Congress. And I don't like pork, is right. Thank you.